Hi, I'm Chris Krimitsos, executive producer of The Messengers, a podcast documentary.
And I'm Neil Galarte, director of The Messengers.
Now, a few years ago, Neil and I were inspired by the people we met at Podfest Multimedia Expo, and we created this amazing movie about the world of podcasting and what motivates people to get their message out there. This year, we decided to take it off of the distribution and literally releasing it free to the entire public domain on International Podcast Day.
Making this film was so fun, an amazing experience for both of us, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. So get some popcorn, sit back and relax, and enjoy The Messengers.
Roll it!
What's amazing about podcasting is that it is a chance for people to get their voice out there, and every day I'm amazed by the things that there are podcasts about.
So I haven't ever thought of it as like a big business thing or anything, but here we are having events about it. People are lining up, they're selling out, and I just want to understand what is the fascination with podcasts. Maybe it'll help me be a better salesman for what I do.
First of all, why are you podcasting? That's got to be, if you don't know why, you're never going to make it through the how.
Well, I saw podcasting as an up-and-coming way to reach a niche.
I think it makes people more confident. It makes people better to communicate, and just, I don't know, makes them feel good about themselves.
Oh, and then I can give other women who aren't being interviewed on those business shows a chance to tell their story as well.
I chose podcasting over other mediums because I felt it was an opportunity to go a little deeper than most mediums, especially digital mediums. So, of course, there's blogging, but blogging I felt like it was kind of one-dimensional. Podcasting allows you to just go deeper and connect, I think, more intimately with an audience.
It's a cool medium if you want to teach people stuff. So it's creative, it's nerdy, and I can help people. Done. Signed up. Ready to go.
It's really an adrenaline rush, I would say, when I am podcasting and interviewing people and connecting to people. So it's exciting. It makes me a little nervous, but mostly it just brings me joy.
So you could ask 100 podcasters, what do they think a podcast is? And you will get a different definition from each and every one of them.
From what I understood, is it's anything related to a recording of audio or a video. So a YouTube video can be considered a podcast. An audio recording would be considered a podcast. Anything informational that's recorded and pretty much posted online.
My grandmother calls it my broadcast. She doesn't understand. She thinks I'm mispronouncing broadcast. She just doesn't think that podcast is a real word.
It's a kind of like a radio station, but instead of listening to your FM radio, it's through online.
It's radio, but it goes through the internet instead of through the FM radio, and people can listen to it on their phones. And that seems to be a pretty easy way of getting the message across.
You always feel better when you give something, and it helps make relationships. And you have to be careful how you approach a podcast. If you're approaching to sell, people are a lot more circumspect. But if you're giving something and you're genuine, you do form relationships.
What's great about podcasting is everyone has a story to share. And podcasting allows them to get that story out in all different ways. And what they find when they get their story out is that there are so many people that share, no matter how unique, no matter how distinct the topic is, there are other people that are interested in that topic.
I had an episode where I said, don't worry about losing 100 pounds. Focus on losing 10 pounds. And then do it 10 times. And 4 months later, somebody said, hey, Dave, I took your advice, and I lost 100 pounds, which was hilarious because I had not lost any weight at that point. And I was like, well, I actually, it's just me being silly into a microphone, and I actually impacted that person's life. And that's when you kind of have to go like this to keep the ego in check. But it was like, this is powerful stuff. You got to be careful with this.
A lot of people don't like my definition, but I think it's a good one, and it is you have to have an RSS feed. And your podcast has to be in iTunes. And now people don't like the fact when I say you have to be in iTunes because it gets very specific, but if you're not in iTunes, then you're not in Overcast, and you're not in Instacast, and Shifty Jelly Pocket Cast, and Podcast Addict, because all those podcast aggregators out there pull from the iTunes public directory. So by getting it into iTunes, you're getting it into many different places. And if you don't have an RSS feed, you might as well call it a netcast, because you're not really podcasting for sure.
My definition is it's audio subscribed to or streamed through online that is episodic in nature. The reason why I say that is if once you say video, everybody will say, oh, like a YouTube channel. It's a whole different definition. So podcasting, by and large, is audio, and by and large, the majority of individuals are consuming content at a record scale via audio. So that's what I consider a podcast to be.
So podcasting, we are saying it originated in 2004, September of 2004, by two guys. One guy's name was Dave Weiner, who had created a specific code called RSS version 2.0. And then the guy from MTV, Adam Curry with the big hair, he also worked with Dave, I think, in terms of how to get the file onto how to transfer it basically to different locations. So the two of them put their ideas together because RSS wasn't new. People had blogs, and you could read a blog and have the blog come to you. Now we were having not just the blog, but the audio file, the video file, whatever you're doing as well. Fast forward to that, the big one was smartphones, because now smartphones, there's no more wired synchronization. You don't need that anymore. But they're basically syncing in the background via Wi-Fi or whatever you're using, and there's thousands of more podcasts to listen to. Back then, there were like 10.
The first real inflection point in podcasting came in June of 2005, where you didn't have to get these strange third-party apps. iTunes released version 4.9 of iTunes, and that, if you ever want to say there was a hockey stick moment in podcasting, that was it. That was when it went from being uber geeky, you really had to want to consume a podcast, to Apple supporting podcasting. And that was June 2005, release of iTunes version 4.9. That was the first inflection point. The second inflection point came 2 years later when the iPhone came out, because that's when smartphones really became mainstream. And then the next inflection point was 2 years ago when iOS 8 came out, and that's when the podcast app became native.
In my opinion, there's not a very high-tech way to search for the content that you need. There's this overabundance of content under podcasts, and the one place that you have to search is iTunes. And that's a great way to search, but there's different ways that it can be categorized and be talked about and be put out there so people can find all of this stuff. So I think I would say that new technology will emerge to help people find podcasts and become familiar with podcasts.
If all I could do was talk on a mic every day and not have to do anything else, it would be heaven. If I didn't have to do anything else but show up and talk on the mic, I get to interview some of the coolest people in the world, in our horse world, and it's exhilarating when you get to talk to these people and they're excited to talk to you. That makes it really cool.
I always had this dream of being a morning drive radio show host. I'm a performer. That's what I do. And whether it's selling ads or whatever I'm doing there, I'm performing. You're on stage. And so I thought, well, radio's kind of cool. I always wanted to get into radio, but it's too hard. And I was making more money than I probably would have made in radio. So that was out. And then when we thought about the Horse Radio Network, I always said, I'm going to do a morning drive radio show live, only it's going to be about horses. It's going to be funny. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be morning radio. It's just going to be about horses. I'm going to do that at some point when the technology catches up and I'm able to do it. And we did. That was one of my bucket list goals, was to do horses in the morning.
What a beautiful day for horses in the morning.
Well, good Friday morning. It's Freestyle Friday, and I am Glenn the Geek from Ocala, Florida.
While you were out learning to save people's lives, I cleaned my Mustang sheath for the first time.
How'd that go, by the way? That was probably more dangerous than flying a jetliner.
It only
Neil
took
and
a year
Chris
and a
are
half.
sitting here wondering what a sheath is right now. They have no idea what we're talking about.
I washed my horse's wiener, guys.
Yes.
That's pretty much what happened.
What the heck's our message, Jamie?
Cleanliness, apparently.
That's all you need to know about horses. You're good.
I come from a very conservative background. I went to Christian high school all my life. Didn't go to high school all my life, but I went to Christian schools all my life, went to Christian college, and, definitely identify as a Christian. But I'm also gay, and I also have a wife. We've been together now for 14 going on 15 years. And in South Carolina, the way the law is right now, a teacher in South Carolina could lose their job because of their sexual orientation, regardless of how great of a teacher they are. And that's always one of those things that kept us from really being out and open with people in a genuine way where we can actually build relationships with people. So I started Team Podcast with an idea in December of 2014. And from there, my first year in business, we hit 6 figures. Luckily, I was able to kind of bootstrap the whole thing and not have to go into a lot of debt to do that. But we grew so fast, and the podcasting, the amazing opportunity that I've been given through podcasting is not just meeting other people, building relationships, but I can actually work from my home. I've been able to go anywhere I want. I can travel and still do my work. And, sometimes you want to have a vacation where you don't work, but, here I am living. Who knew? I still drive around thinking, I cannot believe I live in the Florida Keys. This is my view from my backyard. I mean, my backyard is not backyard. It's water. And, we've just now gotten a boat. It's so amazing that this life in a year and a half, essentially, has been to the point where now we can really live and do what we want to do. But it was one of those accidental discoveries that really changed my life. And if I didn't have podcasting, I wouldn't be where I am today.
I think podcasting is very well dominated by women. I wouldn't say dominated by women, but I think women have a very strong presence in podcasting.
Hey, I'm Denicia Hilton, and I am the founder of the Sisters of Flow podcast, where we go with the flow about anything and everything menstrual cycles. So welcome to my Flowasis. I love podcasting about periods and menstrual cycles because it's something that people don't talk about. The Sisters of Flow podcast is where we really just go with the flow about anything and everything menstrual cycles, right? And what that means is it's a platform that I'm able to actually raise awareness, but also we touch on all of the social aspects. So that's where the Sisters of Flow began, and that's where we're at right now. I'm here to tell you that over the time that I've been podcasting, it's just been open arms. There are very powerful women out there who are doing amazing things and making major transformations, just out there being themselves and doing their own thing, and I just love it.
No, don't talk in the mic.
She's
Just
a
talk.
baby.
She's on the floor. And she's dancing like she's never danced before. Did you get that? My name is Katie Kremitzos. My podcast is Biz Women Rock. My listeners are, they're business women who are in business already. They, for the most part, there's some people who are still kind of touching their toes into thinking about starting a business. But for the most part, my listenership are women. They're in business. Many of them have been in business for a long time, and they just want to connect. They want to hear that they're not alone. So my women are women who are in there. They're in the trenches of their business. They want to hear stories of how other women have done it. It's a women-specific show. I interview women specifically who have been through the gauntlet of business. And they share authentic stories. So the women listening are very grateful that they get to hear somebody talk not just about this success story, but they really get to hear, like, what was it really like when you had your first kid, and how did you actually balance that? And what was it really like when you didn't know how you were going to pay payroll next week? And how did you actually make that happen? So the women who are listening are very, they're ready to take action, and they're proactive about growing their business. I chose podcasting because I wanted a platform that could be global, and I get like this fire in my gut about the fact that I have the opportunity, and I'm very humble about the fact that people actually listen to me, and they're not in the room with me. They're somewhere in another state, in another city, in another country, in a completely different time zone, in a completely different lifestyle. And they choose to listen to what I have to say and what I'm presenting because they deem that valuable, and that blows my mind.
So you guys are an unlikely pair. How did the two of you meet up?
Podfest, actually, last year.
Yep.
And we met up, and I don't know why we like each other, because he likes this hip-hop music, and I hate
He likes
rap.
country.
Oh, jeez. And I like country, he hates country. I don't know why we even like each other.
I think
actually.
it was because I had green eyes.
But people always try to get you guys to do more stuff together.
You know, it's starting, I think. They're
Now.
starting now, it will be.
We have an act now.
Yeah, we...
What's up? How you guys doing? Howdy. I'm Michael Arte.
And I'm Glenn Geek. What's up?
Homie the Geek.
He knows more about horses than I do now.
Yeah, I know about sheathing, and that's changed my life.
Your co-host is the most important thing you're going to do if you have one in your podcast. It has to be somebody that you would go on a vacation with and enjoy every minute of it. If it's not, do not have them as your co-host, because it will not work.
Yeah.
I want the two of you to look at each other and say the first thing that comes to your mind.
You're sexy, man.
Okay, we're good.
I don't even know where that came from.
That's disturbing.
So when I started helping my wife with podcasting, I never imagined that I would meet literally hundreds upon hundreds of other podcasters and that they would become part of my family. And I'm not talking about podcasting family. That's how it started. I'm talking about like literally I will call people up and say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? The interesting thing is we listen to each other's podcasts, so we know what's going on with one another. And then we also watch each other on social media. So it's a really tight-knit community. And I think there's another thing that binds everybody, because all of us are compelled to share a message to help others. There's a thread there that all these amazing messengers have they got that heart that wants to give back.
I have stage 4 colon cancer, and I'm a 5-year survivor. And I'm very involved in the largest national organization that supports colon cancer awareness and education and research, the Colon Cancer Alliance. I serve as a buddy volunteer, so I have the opportunity to speak to other people when they are diagnosed and share my story and provide some hope and encouragement for these folks. And I don't recall who was speaking, but the whole idea just started to intrigue me, and it hit me. What if I could interview other people like myself who are doing well, who are thriving themselves, their caregivers, perhaps medical professionals? All these ideas were running through my head. And I said, this sounds like something I should consider doing. So I turned to a good friend, Katie Kremitzos, who'd been podcasting at that point. I think she'd been doing it about 6 months successfully. And I said, Katie, I've got this idea. Am I out of my mind? And she literally put one hand on each shoulder, looked me in the eye, and she said, oh my God, you need to do this. And that's all I needed to hear. So while I have colon cancer, I'm in the gym 5 mornings a week. I feel just as healthy as you do, as most people walking down the street. It's being managed, and I look at it as a chronic condition right now. But there's other people that are hearing those 3 words. You have cancer. And they need to hear from people like me that, oh, I heard that 5 years ago. And look at me. The people don't think this can happen. This is their future, and it can be.
So Lee, how important has it been for you to have Linda's support?
Now I tell her, from the heart, don't know how I'd be here today without her. And my father and my mother said, when you finish chemo, we're all going to get the family together, and we're going to have a big celebration dinner. And they all did a toast to me, but I stood up and I did a toast to Linda and my family. And I said, because this all happened as we just started seeing each other and got married, and I said, you know what? And I meant this from the heart. I would do all of it all over again to have her by my side.
Wow.
And that includes the surgery and the chemo, all of it, to have this love.
I once walked into a bar in the Philippines, and I look at the menu,
and a rum and coke is $1. And a double rum and coke is 75 cents. A triple rum and coke is 50 cents. And so I'm scratching my head, and I asked the bartender, I said, how could a rum and coke be $1 and a double and a triple is less expensive? Very simple, sir, she says to me. Here in the Philippines, rum is cheaper than coke. And so a lot of times we have a perspective or perception of something that we want, and the value that we place on that is something completely different than what somebody else places the value on. So right now, a lot of people are placing their value in radio, and I have a strong suspicion that that's about to change.
The differences between radio and a podcast go both ways. So radio people have a lot to learn about podcasting. Podcasting people can learn a lot from radio people. When you're listening to the radio, you may tune in at any time. So every 30 seconds, I have to say, I'm sitting here talking to so-and-so about whatever. So we're always resetting because we have a new audience. It's almost like giving a speech to people in a hallway as they're walking by. You have to keep reminding them of what you're talking about. And so radio people get conditioned to be like that. Podcasting compared to radio, you have this opportunity to tell a story from beginning to end. You have an opportunity to tell the background, to build characters, to whatever it is you're doing, whatever your topic is. You have that opportunity to have somebody start listening at the beginning when you want them to start, and then they stop listening, hopefully, if they make it to the end, and you don't have to just give little bits of information. So you can go long form. Doesn't mean it needs to be long. It just means that you can go long form in your presentation.
So when you look at things online, the big buzzword is scale. And that's why traditional radio broadcasters have had a hard time, if they don't have stations around the country, getting enough listenership in terms of scale nationally. Somebody like Pandora has massive scale all over the country, and I think that's a challenge that radio has. But what radio, an advantage to the localism that radio can bring to the table is what's going to keep it viable. It's just how they deliver the information. I think they're rapidly trying to figure that out.
Some people in radio get podcasting and embrace it, and Dave Ramsey, great example. Joyce Meyer, another great example. They're all over the radio. They're syndicated, but they also have podcasts. Dave Ramsey gets over 8 million downloads a month to his podcast, even though he's on almost every radio station. He's in a radio station in every market in the U.S. But he's still getting another 8 million downloads a month on top of that. So he embraced it. He gets it. NPR obviously gets it, right? So, but even NPR internally, some people don't get it. There was a memo inside NPR that said, stop promoting podcasts on the air. And then once that became public, there was a quick backtrack. Oh, we didn't really mean that. Well, you wrote a memo. Yeah, you did. You just got caught. Now you're backtracking. So there are a lot of people in podcast and radio still don't get it. And I think where a lot of them don't get it is from arrogance.
Professional broadcasters have a distinct advantage over amateur podcasters because we understand how to communicate a message effectively. And I know there are people who are doing podcasts, they're amateurs, and they've got a big audience or a very loyal audience, and they're going to argue at that point. But you've got to remember, a good writer is still a good writer. A good actor is still a good actor. We have YouTube, but we've still got great actors who are out there doing fantastic things because they know how to communicate. They know how to evoke emotion.
There are people in radio that think if you don't have a call letter behind your name, you're not good. If you don't have that, if you haven't been on the air, you don't have real talent, which is total BS.
You have to understand, radio is a defined platform. People know when to put advertising on. Podcasting is a whole different format. Because it's on-demand content, people are monetizing in different ways. People are utilizing podcasts. It's almost like the golden era of radio when Orson Welles and War of the Worlds, all that stuff was experimentation back in the day where people were creating fictional worlds, and so that's happening now again, which I think what happened is radio became too corporate. It became too structured, and it didn't allow for the creativity that now podcasting allows.
You can see all sorts of podcasts that are able to be very successful, produce great content that never could have made it onto a radio station 10 years ago.
Anyone can get behind a mic, have their voice, get their show out to thousands of people that they never would have met otherwise. And it's still a great thing.
I like to think that radio is kind of dealing with this identity crisis now, where we used to be the master. New bands would come, they really wanted to get on the radio. They don't have to do that anymore. I'm no longer the master in the audio world. Now I'm the servant, and I've got to really measure up to compete with the masses who are putting out great content.
The beauty of podcasting is, if you have talent, you'll do well. There's nothing holding you back. You don't have to have been from a radio station to do well in podcasting. If your show's good, it will rise.
No, nothing against professionals who have been on the radio and TV and stuff like that. But, I don't know, I see podcasting giving the regular Joe a shot to be behind the mic and be a star.
Hi, my name is Lily Wong, and I'm become a podcaster 2.5 years ago. And my podcast name is Fly with Lily. In Mandarin, 学英语环游世界. And now I have 19 million downloads.
Can you repeat that? Did you just say 19?
19.
In how long?
In 2.5 years.
You have 19 million downloads.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm originally from Taiwan, but I moved to Shanghai because I met my husband there. And I started podcast. At first, he wasn't very supportive, but I was really passionate about it. So I started making podcasts with him. I involved him into making podcasts with me. And as soon as we started to do that, and then we see a lot of feedback that is really positive. But I was really struggling with how to make money from my podcast. I want to be like more financially free. I want to be able to see myself traveling the world and then having my own business on the side. And I was struggling with that. And I thought my husband was really supportive until like one day I accidentally found out a sex tape, like sex video on his phone with another woman that I also trust. And in my house. So that was really painful, and then I kind of like paused my podcast because I was trying to heal my own pain, because I was always the girl that would want to express like happiness, like how wonderful my life is, how wonderful that how happy I was with that person. But now the dream was all broken. I packed my bags. I was just like, I'm done. And then now he's not in the house. I can pack my stuff. So I left the house and I told him that I'm not going to come back. So far, I podcasted in 5 different countries and 30 different cities. I've been living out of my suitcases for 9 months. I'm a journalism student. I major in journalism, but I was really tired of writing people's stories. I always feel that I have better stories to tell. So I just figured this is the best way. I tried writing, but not many people read my stories. But I tried podcasting. I guess I was in the right moment.
But we owned a big farm, and we had about 20 horses and 20 acres and 6,000 square foot house, all of that stuff. And then I got really sick with Lyme disease. Lyme is very prevalent in the horse world. And I don't know when I got it, actually. I had it for a couple of years before they diagnosed it. I'd gone to a dozen doctors, been in the hospital on and off for a year. Our business started to go down because I couldn't pay any attention to it. And we got to the point where we said, okay, I was in and out of the hospital. I was spending weeks in the hospital with stroke-like symptoms. They just couldn't figure out what it was. We also owned an acting company for 10 years. We did Benny Hill versions of Medieval Feasts. And I actually credit the improvisational performing training I have for all our successes today. Without that, I wouldn't be successful today. That just gave me the basis for selling and also for doing the shows and making them fun and entertaining. So I recommend everybody gets improvisational training acting. That is the best thing you can do for your business, and especially if you're a podcaster. We get a lot of mail now. And I got this one. Sarah sent this recently. She said, Hi, Horse Radio Network crew. I've been listening to Horses in the Morning since December or January when I finally downloaded the podcast and figured out how to listen. Months later, I am still listening, but I have moved back to Colorado to be closer to my family. I still struggle with PTSD PTSD, anxiety, and dissociative identity disorder, but I'm starting to do better. Now I get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I love the quiet time in the dark. I listen to the previous day's episode when I have my coffee and play fetch with my guide dog, Fargo. Oh yeah, I'm also blind besides having mental health issues. So Fargo listens to your show too. It doesn't get any better than that. That's why we do it.
And you get those quite often. Yeah.
That's why we do it. This is why we do it. Your hope is to entertain, but your hope is to affect people, is to do good for people. And, if we take a bad day and make it a brighter day, that's what this is all about. That's why we get up every morning at 4 o'clock.
How did the mobilepro.net start? How did Mobile Pro podcasting start? This was never my vision. It really came from this mission here in Guatemala. So we had a group of teenagers who came with us on the mission that year, and their parents weren't coming. They were coming with the church group. And, they were a little nervous about their daughters and their sons coming to Guatemala. And I thought, I really want to set the minds at ease of the parents of these kids. And so how can we communicate back home on a regular basis throughout the week that will just let them know that their kids are fine, everything's safe, they're fine? Like, what if we could get pro audio clips from the team members here and communicate back home on a regular basis throughout the week? So I'm like, this is it. An iPhone and a microphone, maybe an interface, and that's it. And I finally cracked the code. And I started releasing training videos on how to do pro quality mobile podcasting from anywhere. Because I'd been doing it from here, which is anywhere, and actually on the site. And so that's how it began. Mobile Pro podcasting from anywhere right here in Guatemala.
Podcasting is like a superpower. To give us the ability to share with others from around the world our message, whatever our message might be. Podcasters have the ability to educate, to entertain, to inform, to inspire. They can garner laughter. They can garner tears. And one of the most powerful ways that I've witnessed podcasting being used is right here in Guatemala.
I started listening to podcasts back in 2006 when I wanted to learn other languages, so I really wanted to hone in on my Spanish skills because my wife and I had this crazy idea of moving international. So I started listening to podcasts just voraciously over the course of a couple years, just trying to pick up Spanish. That was the first thing I did. I just listened to a podcast called Coffee Break Spanish. I really wanted to learn about entrepreneurship, so I started listening to a lot of podcasts like that, and I figured, this is something really unique. It seems like I'm at the cusp of something huge, and I wanted to be part of it.
When I first learned about podcasting, I didn't get it. When John Lee told me he was launching a podcast, I supported him 100%. I didn't know what podcasting was. I didn't understand what that could do. I saw and watched John Lee build this audience and share this message with people that was literally changing their lives.
So for the first 6 months, there was a struggle because Kate was working at her job as an account executive. I was just in this little bubble, in this podcasting bubble with really nobody that I could talk to face to face. Of course, I had my mastermind and my mentor, but that was all virtual. Like I needed somebody that was in the flesh that could sit down, that we could talk. And so when Kate joined the team 6 months into EO Fire, it changed everything.
My dad's a huge role model for me, and I've always really looked up to him. And I remember very clearly making that phone call and saying, Dad, I'm really in like a strange spot right now, a spot that I never thought that I'd be in. I have a great job, and I've said that this is like the job that I want. But John started this podcast, and, you know, I could come on board with him and do this with him. What do you think I should do? And my dad was like, what's a podcast again? When I started doing the podcast and I started hearing all these comments about, you know, Kate just sounds like she's reading her posts and it's so scripted and I'm not listening to this podcast anymore, I thought, like, I've got to find a way to connect with my listeners the same way I was able to connect with my readers. And it's at the point that I started getting listeners reaching out to me and saying those same things. I'm so glad that you talked about this because I felt like you recorded this episode for me. Or I'm so glad that you shared that you had that struggle because that's what I'm going through right now. And that's when I felt like I've finally found my voice. I finally get on the mic and I don't feel like I need to read anything. And I don't feel like I need to have this big agenda about what I'm out to do in this episode. It just started flowing.
You have to make your voice your own. Because if it's not, it's just going to be inauthentic. It's just not going to be as powerful as it would be if and when you find your own voice, your own brands.
The first dollar John made after he started podcasting was from an ebook that he put on Amazon. I think when people start a podcast and they think of monetization, they think I've got to get sponsors. I have to figure out how to get sponsors on my show because that's how I'm going to make money. There are so many other ways to generate revenue from a podcast.
I think what the key thing is here is it's not an instant monetization play. For me, I had to build an audience for 6 months. Now, how did I build that audience? I delivered free, valuable, and consistent content. That process right there created an audience for me, which is Fire Nation. That allowed me to reach out to my audience and say, what are you struggling with? Then they would tell me their pain points, their obstacles, their challenges, their problems. That allowed me, the person that they know, like, and trust, to turn around and create the solution for them in the form of a product, a service, or a community.
The second dollar that he made after he launched the podcast was coaching. One-on-one coaching, he established himself as an authority in a niche, and people wanted to learn from him because he was creating something amazing. They wanted that too. What better to do than go to the person who's creating what you want and have them teach you how to do it?
And so now I was having these different revenue streams, one-on-one mentoring, memberships, membership masterminds, as well as the sponsorships. And that's going to allow me to reach out to them and say, okay, now you guys have told me what you're struggling with. What products do you need? What services do you need? We want people to see the success that we've had so they can emulate that success. But we're also very honest about all the failures that we have, which are a lot, so that they can avoid those failures as well.
Podcasting has allowed me to build a business where I can work from my home. I am working one-on-one with members of my community as a business coach and also facilitating paid masterminds. So it's allowed me to have a freedom business, basically.
Podcasting has opened up like way too many doors, like literally so many that I can't go through them all. The biggest thing that podcasting did, one, it immediately legitimized my business. It makes you an expert in your field. So if you're podcasting, people seem to think that you're an expert in what you're doing. That's why you're behind the mic. But I've gotten speaking opportunities out of it. I've been able to go on cruises and speak. I've been able to talk about more than just my show, but also just how to do better video, how to apply that to your business, how to expand. So I think the biggest thing it's done too is just kind of make me realize that I was stuck in my little video production box. And I thought that that's the only way I could help people was to give them better visual tools. But now through the podcast, like, we touch everybody in 1,000 different ways. So I love it. I'm not stopping it anytime soon.
So I feel like I have become
a lot more open-minded, a lot less stereotypical. I feel like I have become a brand new person, to be honest with you. It's totally changed my life.
I feel like it'll continue to grow, that more and more even major news resource or stations and those platforms will pick it up. We are seeing that more and more. But at the same time, the little guys, if you will, the guys like Danny Pena, who started out with just their own little recorder and are now part of the CBS network, that's still going to be possible too.
My name is Danny Pena, founder and co-host of Gamertag Radio.
I'm originally from New York City, and I came to Miami in 1992, a month right after Hurricane Andrew. Down here in the early 90s, hip-hop wasn't that big, so the only way we were getting music was our cousins would send us mixtapes from New York City, and then eventually they started having like little hip-hop shows on Thursday nights or late Saturday nights. But eventually I started doing mixtapes with my cousin, hosting parties. I was always on the mic. And then we started promoting a lot locally in Miami. And we got so known that music labels was hitting me up, DJs from here. So DJ Khaled hit us up, Wyclef's crew hit us up, Keras One, a bunch of other like well-known hip-hop artists contacted us just for us to like start promoting their music and stuff like that, man.
When I say Gamertag, you say radio. Gamertag Radio. Gamertag Radio. Gamertag Radio. You know what? I think I just throw it to the crowd and see what happens.
We inspire people to buy products, buy games, without visual, strictly audio, us talking about it. They could tell that we're not faking it based on the excitement that we have.
Welcome to Gamertag Radio, episode 575. This is your old Danny, aka Godfrey, and also Paris calls me Danny Forskew, which technically I'm kind of correct.
No, you're not actually. And I have the reason why you're not
We'll
correct.
talk about that later. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, that's Paris. Paris, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man.
But I have a great team too. Paris, Pete, they've been they're like Voltron to me. We get together and we work really, really hard every week.
Pete Rock in the house, Pete. I know, right?
Took us 11 years to get all these big opportunities, but I was always patient. I was always focusing on working on our show and just meeting our community, engage with your listeners. Super important.
I'm Yami. I'm the publisher of Twinfinite.net, the video game website. I appreciate Danny, Peter, and Paris. They're as personalities. I really respect them and what they do. The fact that they can go and talk about video games in a positive light and to do it consistently and to really care about their community, it shows like how great they are. I started in gaming and I didn't know anything. I didn't know where to start, what to do. I'll never forget that. We went to a Cuban coffee place and we sat down and we had some Cuban coffee. And he basically just ran me through a bunch of contacts, a bunch of ways that I could get my name out there. It meant the world to me, basically. How much he helped me with that. At E3, he every time he saw somebody that he knew, he would also say, "Hey, this is Yami. She started a video game site." So it's really like he's one of the few people that helped me get my name out there too.
Like I always tell people, especially podcasters, like you never know who's listening. You never know, and your listener is the one's going to be spreading the word about you.
Gamertag Radio is awesome. Everybody who works with him is awesome, and it's all about multiculturalism and all about supporting people who don't have a voice. And like he's given a voice to the people who can't express themselves, and that's mad. That's like that's important, and that's what we need. That's what we need so badly, and he does such a fantastic job of that. And love you, Dan. He's my primo. That's my primo right there. Plátano power.
We met one day. It was like instantly good dude, passionate about games, passionate about podcasting, which at that time I was like clueless about. I remember he was one of those first dudes that was on it. He was like podcasting, he was getting community together, he was getting people passionate about games on another level. And I remember we did an early podcast. It was basically just chatting about games, about our experiences on that visit. And I was like, this is great. People should do more of this.
The one time where I realized how big it actually was is we were walking into a Cheesecake Factory, and someone held the door open for us as we walked in. And when we went to sit down, Danny showed me his Twitter feed, and it was the guy that opened the door for us and said, "Oh my God, I just held the door open for Godfrey." And I was like, he could have just said hi. He didn't have to like tweet that, I just saw him and not, because I guess they feel like he's not approachable, but he could have, it was just, for me, it was really weird because I was like, people are tweeting about you. He's like, I go, the people are just tweeting about you, right? He's like, yeah, it happens all the time. I'm like, it happens all the time?
I was getting inducted to the Podcast Hall of Fame, and the Miami Herald interviewed me. So they put me on the front page of the newspaper. They talked about our 10th anniversary, the award and everything. And I told my dad, like, Dad, Bobby, please go pick up the newspaper. Would like for you to check it out. Can they interview me about the show? And he was like, okay.
Yes, I just went to the store, and when I see my song there in first page, I say, wow, I don't believe that, and this is making me so proud.
So he goes to the store, calls me crying, and he's like, Danny, I don't know what you do, but I'm super proud of you. Super proud of you. Like little things like that. Because I've been telling him for years about the show. He still don't get it.
I say, wow, I don't even know what he's doing, but this is so good.
Turn it around so we can see it.
Wow.
But he's happy. He's always been supportive, him and my mom too. So like little things like that, it's like very special to me,
Estoy muy orgulloso de mi hijo porque comenzó desde chiquito jugando con el Atari y jugando y corriendo y grabando y filmando todo, y ahora yo veo a mi hijo lo importante que está ahora en la revista, en todo, y para mí es un orgullo muy grande, de verdad.
Where do I want podcasting to go? I would like to see the integration of more professional shows help weed out the crappy shows. In other words, I think that there's a lot of fear around the indie podcaster that if big networks come in with their podcasts, that they're going to eat our lunch, so to speak. And I don't necessarily think that's true. But what I hope happens is that we are now going to be held to a higher standard of talent, of audio, of humor, of entertainment, of content.
I would like to see less people thinking that podcasting is a business. Because in my mind, I don't think podcasting is a business. I think that you have a successful business and you add to it with a podcast.
The prediction to me is short-term shows and seasonal shows. I honestly believe that the days of weekly shows or daily shows are coming to a close. People are getting busier and busier, and I think it's okay to take a little time, and instead of doing a weekly show, I think we're going to see those short-term things, launching a new product like a book, or we're also going to see a seasonal approach where you get 13 episodes like a movie or a television show, and you're going to see those 13, then take some weeks off, and then come back again with new content and different stories.
Really what I learned from podcasting, a lot more than just it being the next evolution of radio, it's just people coming together to make a passion that they have. So whether it be from talking about horses, whether it be about recipes, or whether it be about wedding design, podcasting has a niche for everybody. Anybody can listen to it.
I think we're just at the beginning. I think that in the future, podcasting is just going to go crazy. But if you're looking to start a podcast, I will say this. Do it in the niche. Niches are where the most money's going to be made in podcasting. The nichier, the better. My smallest show has the most engaged audience, and I make the most money on it. And what is that? That's our driving radio show. It's about carriage driving. We have the smallest audience, but they are crazy for carriage driving, and they will buy any product that we advertise on the show. That is our most profitable, but it's our smallest show. The niches are where the money's going to be in the future. Local and niches.
My biggest advice to people is focus on a niche, or a niche, however you want to say it, and get really honed in on a very specific tool, because today's listener is starting to become really picky. And so I want to find the podcast on how, raisins used for wine, and they want that specific show. So if you're a specialist in something and it's something that you love, I would focus on really honing in on a very specific part of it. And you're going to have a better chance at not only having a more interesting podcast, but you'll be able to also be a better expert on other podcasts because you're so focused. And it'll bring an audience very specific to what you want. And I think it'll be a better experience for them.
So traditional radio, so terrestrial radio stations are now starting to launch their own podcasting networks. And they're following, the footsteps of NPR. And you're going to see a lot more radio stations get into launching their own podcast networks, which I think are going to be tremendous for the medium as a whole. And we're going to just see explosive growth in the coming years.
I think the future will be more and more people will know what it is. I think a lot of people on the street right now, if you say, what is podcasting, they may or may not know. Some of the younger generation would know. But I think over time, people are going to know. I know what podcasting is. I love this show, in fact, and that is going to be a fun conversation to start having with more everyday people that are in your community.
I think podcasting is going to become a new form of social media. As the barrier to entry lowers, I think more and more people are going to podcast as a way to journal and as a way to get their thoughts out. Just like people had, basic blogspot, blogs, just like people use Facebook to share their stories and their updates. I think people are going to move towards podcasting as a way to share their story and share their updates.
My grandma lived to be 95. She was born in 1899. So, and the one day she said that, and I was on the couch, she goes, well, honey, I was born in 1899. I'm like, whoa, Grandma, you're older than dirt. And she, in her age, she saw things go from horse and buggy to the space shuttle. So I want to be that guy that looks back, and when we're consuming podcasts in our head through the chip or whatever is going on at the time, and go, yeah, I remember when there was no iTunes and when there was no Google, and kind of be able to hopefully help people, eliminate some of the headaches and things like that. I'll still be doing that. My wife asked me, when are you going to stop podcasting? I said, the day you bury me.
Gabe, share with us your most embarrassing moment as a podcaster.
It'll be better if I actually just play it for you. You can hear it for yourself. So this is 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm warming my voice up. And this is what happened. Wasn't pretty. Now you got to realize that I deal with private clubs, the most exclusive properties across the country, and they're listening to me on my show doing this because I forgot to edit it out.
You guys go to viewfromthetop.com, check us out. We'd love to talk to you. Viewfromthetop.com. That's me. Yep.
I think I should write a book called View from the Bottom.
My most interesting moment podcasting has to be when we interview this guy who dribbles 2 basketballs throughout an entire marathon for charity. And he comes to our house with his balls and shows us all kinds of crazy moves.
I've been podcasting for 12 years. I've been nominated for probably 8 different awards. Haven't won a single one yet. And then my cat wins an award before I do for Best Pet Sidekick. I mean, what's a guy got to do to get an award?
Well, what happens if all of a sudden you have a big urge to pass gas? and you're on. You're talking to your interviewer, the doctor, and you got that urge, and it's bad. Okay, it's so bad that you don't know if you're going to pass gas or you're going to poop. That kind of. All right, you know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? I know. All right, so you're in the closet. All right. So now the only thing you can do because you're sitting at your computer is you have to stand up. Okay, because you have to squeeze your cheeks. Okay, and it is so bad that you're literally almost dancing now because you got to do this gas and you're praying to God it's going to be the silent but deadly, not the.